Ever wonder why Sidney Poitier's romantic drama features dirt bike racing, a composer named after a British legend, or why an actor's tribal scars mysteriously vanished mid-film? From Bob Marley's girlfriend winning an Oscar to a white stunt double wearing blackface makeup, this 1973 forgotten gem hides secrets stranger than fiction. Fact 1. The actor who was fired after filming. Imagine finishing your entire role in a major Hollywood movie, wrapping production, and then discovering months later that the director decided to fire you and reshoot every single one of your scenes with a different actor. That's exactly what happened to Irish actor T.P. McKenna during the making of A Warm December in 1973. McKenna had been cast as Dr. Henry Barlow, a physician who becomes involved in the film's medical drama surrounding the female lead's terminal illness. He filmed all of his scenes, completed his work on the production, and presumably went home thinking he just added another solid credit to his resume. But director Sidney Poitier wasn't satisfied with something about McKenna's performance, or perhaps the chemistry between the actors, and made the bold and expensive decision to completely recast the role. British actor George Baker was brought in to replace McKenna, and the entire production had to reassemble to reshoot every scene that McKenna had appeared in. This kind of dramatic recasting after filming is completed is extremely rare in Hollywood because of the enormous additional costs involved. You have to pay the crew again, rent equipment and locations a second time, and coordinate everyone's schedules all over again. For an actor like McKenna, it must have been a devastating professional blow to be cut from a Sidney Poitier film, especially one backed by the prestigious First Artists production company. The incident highlights just how much control Poitier wielded as both director and star, and how committed he was to getting every element of the film exactly right, regardless of the financial or logistical complications involved. Fact 2. Bob Marley's girlfriend was the leading lady. The stunning actress who played Catherine, the mysterious and tragic female lead in A Warm December, wasn't just any Hollywood starlet. Esther Anderson was actually Bob Marley's girlfriend and one of the most influential figures in launching reggae music onto the global stage. Anderson, a Jamaican actress and photographer, had a deeply intertwined personal and professional relationship with Marley during some of his most creatively productive years. She didn't just support his career from the sidelines. Anderson actively contributed to the creation of his music, co-writing lyrics and helping shape the sound that would make Marley an international icon. Her influence can be heard on landmark albums like Catch a Fire, which helped introduce reggae to audiences far beyond Jamaica. Anderson's connection to the music industry ran even deeper through her relationship with Chris Blackwell, the founder of Island Records, with whom she co-founded the label that would become synonymous with reggae music worldwide. Her work as a photographer also documented crucial moments in reggae history, capturing intimate behind-the-scenes images of Marley and other artists. So when she appeared opposite Sidney Poitier in this romantic drama, she brought with her a real-world glamour and cultural significance that extended far beyond the movie screen. Anderson's presence in the film represents a fascinating intersection of Hollywood cinema and Jamaican music culture during a pivotal moment when both were reaching new heights. Her performance earned her an NNAACP Image Award, proving she had genuine acting talent beyond her musical world connections. Fact 3. The disappearing tribal scars. Mystery 1 of the most glaring and unexplained continuity errors in A Warm December involves the facial appearance of actor Johnny Secca, who plays Dr. Mayomo, a diplomat from an unnamed African nation. Throughout most of the film, Secca's character sports distinctive tribal scarification marks on his face, the kind of traditional markings that signify cultural identity and heritage in many African societies. These scars are clearly visible in scene after scene as his character interacts with Sidney Poitier's Dr. Matt Younger and becomes involved in the film's political and romantic intrigue. The scars are a defining physical characteristic of the character, the kind of detail that viewers notice and remember. But then something bizarre happens in Dr. Mayomo's final appearance in the film. The tribal scars have completely vanished from Secca's face, as if they never existed at all. His skin appears smooth and unmarked, with no explanation given within the story for this dramatic transformation. It's not a subtle change that only the most eagle-eyed viewers would catch. It's a strikingly obvious difference that leaves audiences confused and distracted during what should be an important dramatic moment. Film historians and fans have puzzled over this mystery for decades. Was it a makeup department error? Did they run out of time or budget to properly apply the prosthetic scars for the final scene? Did someone on the crew simply forget that the character was supposed to have facial scarring? Or was there perhaps a deliberate creative choice involved that just wasn't explained properly in the final edit? Whatever the reason, the disappearing scars remain one of the most baffling production mistakes in the film. Fact 4. A white motorcyclist in blackface. The dirt bike racing sequence in A Warm December presented the filmmakers with a technical challenge that led to a production decision that would be completely unacceptable by today's standards. The film features several scenes of Sidney Poitier's character riding a motorcycle through rugged terrain, competing in what appears to be a motocross-style event. These sequences required genuinely dangerous stunt riding that even an athletic actor like Poitier couldn't safely perform himself. So the production hired Malcolm Dern, a professional motocross racer with the skills to handle the challenging riding sequences. But there was an obvious problem. Dern was white and Poitier is black, and even though the stunt rider would be wearing a helmet that completely obscured his face, someone on the production apparently worried that Dern's hands or any exposed skin might be visible on camera and break the illusion. So the solution was to have Dern wear makeup to darken his skin before filming the motorcycle stunts. This practice of using makeup to make white stunt performers match black actors was not uncommon in Hollywood at the time, but it represents a troubling extension of blackface traditions that have deeply racist historical roots. The irony is especially sharp given that this was a Sidney Poitier film, made by an actor who had spent his entire career breaking down racial barriers in Hollywood and insisting on dignity and respect for black performers. The fact that even a production led by Poitier felt the need to darken a stunt double's skin despite his face being hidden shows how ingrained certain practices were in the film industry of the early 1970s. Fact 5. First artist's inaugural flop. A Warm December holds the unfortunate distinction of being the first film Sidney Poitier made under First Artists, a revolutionary production company that represented one of the most ambitious attempts by major stars to take control of their own careers. Poitier had co-founded First Artists in 1969 alongside Paul Newman, Barbra Streisand, and Steve McQueen, with Dustin Hoffman joining later. The concept was groundbreaking for its time. These major stars would have unprecedented creative control over their projects, smaller salaries up front, but significant profit participation and freedom from the traditional studio system that dictated every aspect of filmmaking. It was meant to be a new model for how Hollywood could work, empowering artists rather than executives. So there was enormous pressure and high expectations riding on each film the company produced, especially the first ones. Poitier chose to direct himself in this romantic drama, taking on the dual responsibility of star and filmmaker for this crucial debut project. Unfortunately, despite Poitier's star power and the intriguing premise, A Warm December failed to connect with audiences when it was released in 1973. The film bombed at the box office, earning only modest returns that fell far short of what was needed to justify its production costs and establish First Artists as a viable alternative to the traditional studio system. This commercial failure was a significant disappointment for everyone involved and raised questions about whether the company's artist-driven model could actually succeed financially. While First Artists would go on to produce other films over the next decade, A Warm December's poor performance cast a shadow over the venture from the very beginning. Fact 6. The composer named after another composer. The man who composed the musical score for A Warm December carried one of the most unusual names in Hollywood, and it came with a fascinating backstory that connected American and British musical history. Coleridge Taylor Perkinson received his distinctive hyphenated name from his mother, who was a music teacher and had enormous admiration for Samuel Coleridge Taylor, a British composer of mixed race who had achieved international fame in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Samuel Coleridge Taylor himself had been named after the famous English poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge, creating a chain of artistic legacy spanning multiple generations and continents. When Perkinson's mother named her son, she was making a deliberate statement about musical heritage and the importance of black composers in classical music history. Samuel Coleridge Taylor had faced significant racial barriers in his career despite his immense talent, and by naming her son after him, she was honoring that struggle and expressing hope that her own child might continue that tradition of musical excellence. Coleridge Taylor Perkinson certainly lived up to the weight of that name. He became a highly respected composer, conductor, and educator who worked across multiple genres, including classical, jazz, film, and dance. His score for A Warm December blends romantic orchestral themes with African-influenced rhythms and contemporary sounds, creating an atmosphere that supports the film's cross-cultural love story. The fact that a composer named after another composer created the music for a film about legacy, heritage, and the connections between different cultures adds an extra layer of meaning to the production. Fact 7. A 12-year-old's feature. Film debut. When Yvette Curtis stepped onto the set of A Warm December, she was just 12 years old and facing the daunting challenge of making her feature film debut in a major Hollywood production opposite one of the most respected actors in the industry. Curtis played Stephanie Younger, the young daughter of Sidney Poitier's character, Dr. Matt Younger. And while it wasn't the largest role in the film, it required her to hold her own in scenes with seasoned professionals and conveyed genuine emotion during some of the story's more dramatic moments. The relationship between father and daughter provides important context for why Poitier's widowed doctor is initially hesitant to pursue a serious romance, since he's focused on raising Stephanie alone. For a preteen actress with no prior film experience, the pressure must have been enormous. She had to learn how to hit marks for the camera, deliver lines naturally despite the artificial environment of a film set, and maintain consistency across multiple takes and shooting days. She also had to work with director Sidney Poitier, who was known for being exacting and detail-oriented in his approach to filmmaking. Child actors in the 1970s often received less support and protection than they do today, with fewer regulations about working hours and on-set education. Curtis had to balance the excitement of being in a real movie with the demanding reality of professional film production. Her performance in the film is natural and believable, showing none of the awkwardness or self-consciousness that sometimes marks child actors in their first roles. Despite this promising start, Curtis did not go on to have an extensive acting career, and A Warm December remains her most notable credit. Fact 8. The song that haunted audiences for decades. When audiences heard Letta Mbulu's performance of the South African song Nonkonko in A Warm December, many of them became instantly obsessed with identifying and finding this hauntingly beautiful piece of music. The song appears during a pivotal scene in the film, and Mbulu's powerful, emotive vocals created a moment that lingered in viewers' memories long after they left the theater. But there was a problem. This was 1973, decades before the internet made identifying obscure songs as simple as typing a few lyrics into a search engine. Audience members who wanted to know what they had just heard had no easy way to find out. The song wasn't released as a single tied to the film, and soundtrack albums weren't as widely available as they would later become. So people who had been moved by the music found themselves on a frustrating quest to identify a song they could barely describe and had only heard once. Some dedicated fans took extreme measures, sneaking audio recording equipment into movie theaters to capture the song so they could listen to it again or play it for record store employees in hopes someone might recognize it. This was both technically challenging with the portable recording technology of the era and potentially illegal, but the song's emotional impact drove people to remarkable lengths. The mystery of Nonkonko became a shared experience for many viewers, with some spending years asking friends, checking record stores, and following any lead that might help them identify the music that had affected them so deeply during the film. Fact 9. An unlikely Cold War love story. Released in 1973, A Warm December featured a surprisingly sympathetic and non-threatening portrayal of the Soviet Union at a time when Cold War tensions were still very much alive in American culture and politics. The female lead, Catherine, is revealed to be a diplomat involved in international negotiations, and part of her work involves coordinating a major hydroelectric project with Soviet officials. Rather than portraying the Russians as sinister villains, spies, or ideological enemies, as was common in Hollywood films of that era, the movie presents them simply as business partners in a legitimate infrastructure development deal. This was a notably progressive choice for an American film in the early 70s, when anti-communist sentiment remained strong, and most movies featuring Soviet characters positioned them as adversaries in espionage thrillers or military conflicts. The film's approach reflects Sidney Poitier's broader interest in international cooperation and diplomacy rather than conflict. Catherine's character is shown navigating complex political relationships across national boundaries, treating both Western and Eastern Bloc nations as legitimate players in African development. This storyline choice may have been influenced by the early stages of détente, a period of eased relations between the United States and Soviet Union that was beginning around the time the film was made. Still, it was unusual for a mainstream Hollywood romance to feature Soviet cooperation so casually and positively, without any subplot about espionage, defection, or ideological conversion. The film suggests that international development work transcends Cold War divisions, a message that was somewhat ahead of its time for American popular cinema. Fact 10. One of Hollywood's earliest sickle cell representations. A Warm December deserves recognition as one of the first major Hollywood films to place sickle cell disease at the center of its story, bringing attention to a serious genetic condition that predominantly affects people of African, Mediterranean, and Middle Eastern descent. In the film, Esther Anderson's character, Catherine, suffers from sickle cell anemia, and the disease's progression drives much of the plot's emotional weight as she struggles with the knowledge that her time is limited while falling in love with Sidney Poitier's character. For audiences in 1973, many of whom had never heard of sickle cell disease, the film provided education about a condition that was often overlooked by mainstream medicine and media, despite affecting hundreds of thousands of people, particularly in Black communities. The disease causes red blood cells to become misshapen and break down, leading to anemia, severe pain, organ damage, and shortened life expectancy. By making this condition central to a romantic drama starring major Black actors, the film raised awareness in a way that news reports and medical journals could not. It also reflected growing activism around sickle cell disease in the early 1970s, when Black health advocates and civil rights organizations were pushing for more research funding and better treatment options. The National Sickle Cell Anemia Control Act had been passed just 2 years before the film's release, in 1971, marking the first major federal commitment to addressing the disease. A Warm December contributed to that broader conversation by humanizing the experience of living with sickle cell and showing audiences the real emotional toll it takes on patients and their loved ones. Fact 11. The ambulance mystery that baffles viewers. One scene in A Warm December has left audiences confused and scratching their heads for 5 decades, and it involves Sidney Poitier's motorcycle somehow ending up inside an ambulance. The sequence in question occurs after a dramatic moment in the film when Poitier's character has been riding his motorcycle. Suddenly, in the next scene, viewers see the motorcycle loaded inside an ambulance, sitting there as if this were a completely normal and expected way to transport a motorbike. The problem is that there's no clear explanation for why this is happening or how it happened. Did Poitier's character have an accident that somehow wasn't shown on screen? Was the motorcycle broken down and needed to be transported, and an ambulance was the only available vehicle? Was it some kind of unusual emergency response that made sense in the context of a scene that got cut from the final film? The movie doesn't provide any answers, and the motorcycle appears to be undamaged, making the whole situation even more bizarre. Film scholars and confused viewers have debated this moment for years, with various theories about what the filmmakers intended. Some suggest that key transitional scenes were cut during editing, leaving a gap in the narrative that makes the ambulance moment seem random. Others wonder if it was a continuity error where scenes were assembled out of order, or if dialogue explaining the situation was lost in post-production. Whatever the actual explanation, the image of a perfectly functional motorcycle sitting inside an ambulance for no apparent reason has become one of the film's most memorable oddities, the kind of inexplicable detail that sticks with viewers long after they've forgotten other plot points. Fact 12. The Island Records connection. Both of the lead actors in A Warm December had deep connections to Island Records, the legendary music label that revolutionized how reggae and other Caribbean music reached global audiences. Esther Anderson, who played the female lead Catherine, wasn't just connected to Island Records. She actually co-founded the label alongside Chris Blackwell, who would guide it to become one of the most influential independent record companies in music history. Anderson's relationship with Blackwell was both personal and professional during Island Records' early years, and her cultural insights and artistic sensibility helped shape the label's identity and vision. The label would go on to sign and promote some of the most important artists in reggae, rock, and world music, including Bob Marley, whom Anderson was also romantically involved with during this period. The film itself featured music connected to the Island Records network of artists and producers, creating another layer of connection between the label and the production. This intersection of cinema and music was characteristic of the early 1970s, when boundaries between different entertainment industries were becoming more fluid and artists were crossing over between mediums more frequently. The Island Records connection gave A Warm December an authentic link to the vibrant music culture that was emerging from Jamaica and reaching international audiences. It also meant that the film's musical choices were informed by people who were at the absolute center of contemporary Caribbean music, rather than Hollywood executives making decisions from a distance based on stereotypes or limited knowledge. Fact 13. Poitier's most romantic role. Ever critics and fans who have followed Sidney Poitier's long and distinguished career consistently point to A Warm December as the film that showcases him at his most romantic and emotionally vulnerable on screen. This might seem surprising given that Poitier had already appeared in the iconic Guess Who's Coming to Dinner in 1967, where he played half of an interracial couple navigating family and social tensions. But while that film certainly had romantic elements, much of its focus was on the social and political implications of the relationship, rather than the intimate emotional connection between the two characters. A Warm December, by contrast, allowed Poitier to fully embody the role of a man falling deeply in love, with extended sequences focused on romantic moments, tender conversations, and the vulnerability of opening his heart after loss. His character, Dr. Matt Younger, is a widower who has closed himself off emotionally while focusing on raising his daughter alone. Meeting Catherine forces him to confront his fears about love, loss, and the risk of caring for someone again. Poitier plays these emotional beats with a warmth and gentleness that audiences hadn't seen from him before, revealing layers of sensitivity beneath the strong, dignified persona he typically projected. The film gave him space to be romantic in ways that his earlier roles hadn't allowed, with scenes of courtship, longing, and intimacy that showed a different dimension of his considerable acting range. For viewers who only knew Poitier from his more stern or heroic roles, A Warm December offered a revelation about the full scope of what he could do on screen. Fact 14. A triple threat film mashup. The screenplay for A Warm December represents one of Hollywood's more ambitious attempts to blend three completely different movie formulas into a single story. The film intentionally combines elements from Roman Holiday, the classic 1953 romantic comedy about a princess who escapes her duties for a brief adventure with a common man. Love Story, the 1970 tearjerker about a young couple whose romance is cut short by terminal illness. And the spy thriller genre, exemplified by James Bond films with their international intrigue and mysterious conspiracies. From Roman Holiday, the film borrows the structure of a sophisticated, mysterious woman who cannot reveal her true identity, becoming involved with an ordinary man during what both know will be a temporary escape from her real life. From Love Story, it takes the tragic framework of a doomed romance where terminal illness adds urgency and poignancy to every moment the couple shares together. And from spy thrillers, it incorporates elements of diplomatic intrigue, vague international conspiracies, and the sense that Catherine is involved in something larger and more dangerous than she can fully explain. Trying to successfully merge these three very different storytelling approaches into one coherent film was an enormous creative challenge. Each of those genres has its own rhythm, tone, and audience expectations, and finding a balance where the romantic comedy elements don't undercut the tragedy, where the medical drama doesn't overwhelm the international intrigue, and where all three aspects feel integrated rather than simply stitched together required careful screenwriting and direction. The film's mixed critical reception suggests that not everyone felt this mashup succeeded entirely, but the ambition of attempting it reveals Sidney Poitier's desire to create something more complex than a straightforward genre piece. Fact 15. The NNAACP award winner, who vanished from cinema, Esther Anderson's performance in A Warm December earned her the NAACP Image Award for Best Actress in 1974, a significant recognition that should have launched a major Hollywood career. The NAACP Image Awards specifically honor outstanding achievements by people of color in film, television, music, and literature. So winning in the competitive Best Actress category represented validation from an important organization and suggested that Anderson had genuine star potential. She had already proven she could carry a major film opposite Sidney Poitier, one of the industry's biggest names, and she had the glamour, screen presence, and acting ability to build on that success. Yet despite this promising start and prestigious recognition, Anderson appeared in very few films after a warm December and essentially vanished from Hollywood. Her absence wasn't due to lack of talent or inability to get work. Instead, Anderson made a conscious choice to step away from acting and focus her energy on Bob Marley's rising music career and her own work as a photographer. She traveled with Marley, documented his performances and recording sessions, helped shape his image and international appeal, and became one of the most important visual chroniclers of reggae music's golden age. Her photographs captured crucial moments in music history and have become iconic images that define how we remember that era. So while she abandoned a potentially major film career, Anderson's contributions to music and photography were enormously significant. Still, it's fascinating to wonder what might have happened if she had chosen to remain in Hollywood and capitalize on her NAACP award and the momentum from starring in a Sidney Poitier film.